In Ontario, there are a lot of laws around accessibility. Like, for example, the main owner of a website can be fined up to $50,000 a day for accessibility violation. UX is very, very oversaturated with people who are looking at it for the potential for high pay, for working at prestigious companies, and things like that. But from what I've seen and experienced, that's not enough for just getting a job in this industry. I have a great example where a team built a full website within 6 weeks, I think 6 to 8 weeks, using the design system that I'm currently on. And originally that could have easily taken them 6 months to do. And one thing I really, really recommend the folks that I mentor to do is, especially when they're building their portfolio, only show the steps that provide the most impact, that really helped inform your decisions. Again, this is going to seem harsh. What they're teaching in boot camps just barely scratches the surface and doesn't really prepare people for working in the industry, because I would tell myself to just take your time and be patient. Like again, we have 40, 50 years of job time to work through. So have fun with what you're learning.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Design Hat podcast. Today we have a very special guest. I know you guys have been following us for a long while, and we have been bringing amazing guests on the podcast for the longest while. And today we have another one, Kristine, with us. She is a lead UX designer at Thomson Reuters, and she is going to talk about her journey, how she got to where she is now, starting as a graphic designer, studying design, and we're going to get deeper into her journey, and may that be helpful for all of you that you are listening. Let me get her on stage and we'll get it all started. Hey Kristine, how are you doing?
Hey, Abe, I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing great. So let's just start the podcast with kind of your introduction and we'll go from there.
Sure. I'm Kristine. I'm a lead UX designer at Thomson Reuters, where I focus on our design systems. I've been in the industry for about 10 years total, probably 4 to 5 years as a UX designer. And I started out in graphic design, really on the marketing, branding, visual side of everything.
That sounds interesting. So maybe let's go back to where you actually started.
Mhm.
I actually want to get started with knowing how did you knew that you want to go into design, and how did you know that this is something that you actually want to explore as a career option?
Yeah. I have always been a very creative person. Like, even as a little kid, I would be like painting, drawing, sewing, cooking, all of those activities where I could use my hands, make something pretty. And it originally started as wanting to go to cooking school, being a pastry chef. But I knew that I could not handle those types of hours, waking up at 2 a.m. To go make bread, for example. So that's where I pivoted to graphic design. I've always loved like posters, really beautifully designed books or magazines, wine bottle labels that really draw you into the product itself. So that's really where I ended up, and how I ended up in graphic design. And over time, what started as a love of the visual turned more into like the love of people. So how do people interact with products? How can we have products be easier for folks to use, make it a lot more accessible, just make it easier in general to navigate through like all of these devices and products that we use every day. So that's really where I like found my passion, especially like the psychology side of it, how people work together within a team. And right now, on my role as a like UX designer within a design system team specifically, I'm really working on, okay, how do we get the product teams to adopt the design system? How do we make it as easy for them as possible? And how do we teach them how to use the design system most effectively and efficiently? So that way they don't have to worry about making a button 50 times. They don't have to worry about building a form. They can really focus on the people aspect of their work and make their products as best for the customers as possible.
Sounds really interesting, and I think As we get deeper, I would really like we'll talk more about as you're working in the design system team. And nowadays in the profession, you need to choose some specific niche to
Mhm.
kind of dial down into. May that be design system, may that be typography, may that be UI, or whatever you choose.
Mhm.
We'll that deeper, but let's get started with this. So you have worked across various industries, startups, agencies, even with independent clients as well. How would you say like the working with these diverse environments have shaped your perspective as a UX designer?
So to start off with, like all those different things you mentioned, like startups, marketing agencies, giant corporations, it's really taught me how to work with people and how to read people specifically, help them dig down into what they're really looking for. Like, what do they really need help on versus all the other things that they might be worried about. And it's also really taught me how certain types of businesses can impact your work in different ways. Like, for example, on a corporate work like stream, again, completely depending on the company, your scope of work might be more dictated by the business versus the clients. Or if you're working more solo, you have the responsibility of working with your clients and doing all the business administration and things like that. So, really having that variety so early on, like I'd say that was the first 5, 6 years of my career, that really helped me figure out what I want to do and really narrow down like that expertise that I wanted to get into within UX, just because there's so much out there to do. Like, yeah, like it really just helped me gain a lot of people strengths, a lot of curiosity, and really just learning about how like different groups and people work together or don't in some cases.
That is really interesting because I feel uh, working in different industries can also give you, as you said, like different perspectives about different things that
Mhm.
you would have experienced,
Mhm.
but also dealing with different kinds of user archetypes and other stuff. And I think which I feel is really underrated because that really makes a bigger impact on how you can handle any problem that gets to you,
For
right?
sure.
So
Like for example, like my first job was working at a startup for they called it the quick service restaurant industry. And that's completely different from working on like insurance products, or like right now I'm in a lot of tax and law products. So all those experiences really help you figure out how to fine tune your process in every job that you're in, and really just allow you to be as flexible as possible in your everyday work.
no, I totally agree. And I think that does play a bigger role in the overall journey. And people
Mhm.
may not see it right away, but that does
Yes.
play a role without even kind of realizing that it is.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Going forward, I do want to ask you more around the design system side of stuff. So
Mhm.
now you're working and you have been working extensively in design system. What would you say have been like? What would you say is the biggest challenge teams are facing nowadays in like implementing or maintaining design systems in the longer run?
Yeah. Like I've been on a design system team exclusively for it's about 3 years now. And definitely, like it's definitely two things that I've noticed and that I've heard my team talking a lot about. One is system bloat. Like for example, we had a previous design system where we would include anything a product needed if they were like, even if they were the only product using that example. And things, it ended up being at a place where things were not just flexible enough for teams to use. They wanted everything built for them. And that meant it became impossible to maintain for the team. And that's something that we've really learned from. Like now we have a solid process of, okay, you have to have the same use case in 3 products in order for this enhancement to get added in. We ship that back to the product who requested it, and they have to figure out that information. So that's really helped us figure out on the maintenance side, like how do we keep this design system as streamlined and as flexible as possible? But on the flip side, like that goes along with that system bloat, like a lot of folks who are adopting a design system for the first time, like taking their product UI, their current product UI, and moving it into a specific design system, they don't, like in my experience, they don't really understand what the design system provides and how to use it, and that it's completely okay to adapt all the components and things that you're given in order to fit their own needs. Like, for example, this has happened a couple times in the past little while where we have had teams come to us and say, like, hey, I need a disabled button. And a disabled button is something we used to provide, but for accessibility reasons, we decided to get rid of it. So in this case, we'd be like, okay, if you really need the disabled button, these are the tokens you can use to modify the current button. And they were happy with that. And we didn't have to include it in our library in that case. So yeah.
That is pretty interesting. I do have two follow-ups around this. Obviously, one of them leads to a bigger conversation around accessibility, but the other one, when you said like design system bloating, and and you said like you guys, like right now there tends to be challenges where teams include everything and
Yeah.
anything in the design system. So how do you decide what to include and what not to include?
Yeah.
Because as a budding designer, everyone will think everything should be there. How do you make that decision?
Yeah. That is really hard and something that honestly we still struggle with sometimes, especially when it's those like high profile products that are asking for those enhancements. And one thing we've noticed is that one time, like you learn about your design system as you build it and as your consumers use it. So we originally started with a small group of what we call the core components. So your buttons, your form fields, your divider lines, different things like that, like those super, super basic components that you need to build a website or a product, for example. And then over time, this is where we developed our contribution process, which I was in charge of for a good 2-ish years. And this is where we figured out, okay, just for one, our team sanity and to not end up in the same situation that we were before, we came up with the contribution process where so say for example, a product designer came to us and asked, can we have let's just say a search field with 2 buttons on the end of it for whatever reason. So we would go back to them and say, okay, in this case, in order for us to include it in the library, we would like you to find 3 products that need the same enhancement and document all the cases where we would need to include this. And that's really for us to make sure that we're getting a wide variety of just in general use cases, but also making sure that this isn't a one-off component that that one product will need, because a design system is used by multiple products. So at Thomson Reuters, or I'm just going to shorten it to TR, at TR, we have dozens and dozens and dozens of products, if not hundreds. And yeah, we can't be including everything that people need. So what we recommend is people use the library as is. If there's something that they think needs to be added to the library, suggest it to us. We'll totally consider it. But if it's something that we don't see as living in the library, they can take our component, detach it in Figma, and then expand it for themselves to use and kind of build their own mini offshoot like design system library. So that way they can still get like 80-90% of what they need from the main design system library. But as they have like different needs and things like that, that last like 10-20% is covered by their own library and their own enhancements that they're in charge of maintaining.
Pretty interesting. I think so. What I kind of can summarize from this is that especially when you're working with clients with like higher, I would say, emphasis, as long as it covers a certain threshold of their requirements, may that be 50% or may that be 90%, depending on what you decide, as long as that covers that, you guys would not include it unless and until that's a decision that you guys discuss that can be included, right?
Yes, yes, for sure. And to help us with those decisions, um, especially on the design side, the coding side is building up something like this as well. We have a ambassador group where it's one designer or sometimes two from every product. We have a weekly meeting with them, so that way we can discuss potential changes. We can learn from their needs, and eventually just review any additions or enhancements to the library with them. And in exchange, they bring back all those challenges to their teams and discuss, like, okay, is this really useful for us? Do we have use cases here? Do we have examples that we can give to the design system team there, and different things like that?
Pretty interesting. I think that kind of summarizes with what you said. And I think because also, I will also shorten it, TR is also a bigger firm. I
Yes.
think that's why these processes are much more defined,
Mm-hmm.
right? What like I do, because I know design system is quite up and coming, maybe something people are trying to get too deep into.
Mm-hmm.
But I really want to know, what would you suggest for some companies which are very young? They
Yeah.
may not have these certain processes. How would you say, and they have, let's say they have smaller designs team, maybe few designers just in their company. How would you tell these designers to actually advocate for, because like I have worked in startups and I know how pressurizing it becomes when there's a demand of something to become part of, let's say, the design system,
Yeah.
and it's very difficult to advocate. How would you say they should handle this scenario?
I'm going to start off by saying it's just going to really depend on the company and the product. That is always a huge factor in these decisions. But let's just take, for example, if it's a small startup or they maybe have 2, 3 products, but they're thinking of expanding in the future, one way you can advocate for it is that design systems, or even just component libraries, for example, doesn't have to be a full design system, like even just recording the components that you're using, building variables around them, making sure that they're tied to your colors that you're using, even if you're not using design tokens, for example. Those things, yes, they add a little more work to your current like plate of work that you have to take on, but they will really speed up your workflow in the long run. Like, I have a great example where a team built a full website within 6 weeks, I think 6 to 8 weeks, using the design system that I'm currently on. And originally, that could have easily taken them 6 months to do. So over time, once you have those basic components, no matter what they are, it will help speed up your workflow. And two, it really frees up designers and teams in general on just being able to work on other things, not having to worry about, okay, let me like grab that button from a page that I built 3 months ago, when in reality, your whole branding just changed like last week. So that for me is how I would advocate for like building a design, not maybe a full design system, but definitely a component library. So that way it's easier for you to update your components, especially if you go through company merger. Those are happening a lot. You're building a new product. It's easy for you to build out the new branding that way. And two, it will just free up your team in the long run for doing what really needs to be done. And that is building and maintaining your current products.
Very interesting. So I think, to summarize, what I understood is, as long as you as a team can show the business value to it,
Mm-hmm.
it is easy to advocate for it, right? For example,
Yeah.
like you said, you can save time for the design. That can be one of the variables. And obviously, I understand, like other things are basic, like you need to have an alignment with every team, that this is helpful for not just them, not just for us, but for the overall business as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. And by using those business terms of time, return on investment, things like that'll really help you and your team advocate for it in the long run, in my experience. So,
No, I totally agree.
mhm.
Awesome. So let's just dive into a different set of topic that I was talking about, around accessibility. So as I said, so now I've seen like a lot of young designers, or not of just generally designers as well, have been struggling with how to advocate for accessibility, right? That tends to be, unless you are in a bigger company where the impact is much higher, the accessibility kind of puts on a back burner.
Yeah.
So given your background in like accessibility, what would you say your approach is on integrating accessibility in design workflows, and how other folks should do it?
Yeah, like in my experience, like when I was working at a small branding agency, there was a website where their colors were not accessible on the web. They were basically neon and were not nice to experience. And especially all the different color combinations that the client wanted us to use, it wasn't working. So what I recommended and what I still recommend is taking baby steps with um, any like accessibility you want to implement. So, for example, work on your color contrast. Make sure that that fits the WCAG and AOTA standards. Next, maybe you check your type size. Like 16 pixels is the minimum that we always recommend for type size, just so that way it's legible. Next is making sure all your images have alt text. That way, folks who use screen readers or other assistive technologies, they can have a quick description of what they're viewing. So definitely take in those small baby steps of things you can adjust and work up to larger changes. Those larger changes will really depend on what your website or product needs. I'm not fully up to date on what those accessibility accommodations are, but the WCAG website's great. The AOTA website is great. So highly recommend those. And if those don't work, like I've had a lot of friends and colleagues say, oh, my product manager doesn't care about accessibility. We'll do it afterwards. 3 months later, you're stuck. But I know that in Ontario, there are a lot of laws around accessibility. Like, for example, the main owner of a website can be fined up to $50,000 a day for accessibility violations. And this is a new law that was enacted at the beginning of this year, 2025. So that is a huge push for businesses, and it could lead to serious financial consequences. So if those small changes that you can do within your team aren't working and higher ups say like, nope, this is something that we don't think is important, bring in those financial numbers in how it could affect the company and the team as a whole. Like, that's really what I would recommend. Always talk in the business's language to help them understand why these things are valuable, because sometimes just the people aspect of it, like a huge, I think it's like 30% of the Ontario population uses assistive technology in one way or another. Like, sometimes those facts don't work. And sometimes you do have to go with, okay, how can this impact the business as a whole?
No, I totally agree, and I think that was really interesting to know. At the $50,000 fine, I didn't know about that. That was pretty interesting. But I think this does come up that you need to follow all of this. Like, I think people kind of, as I said, people kind of put it in the back burner, and as you
Mm-hmm.
said, people delay it 2 months, 3 months. But at least for Ontario, it should not happen now because of the law, because there's a direct financial link to if you don't do it, right? But I totally understand what you said in terms of how to do it, and how it does affect the business in the longer run. And I think another idea that you presented was really nice about, let's say that for, especially for Ontario, it's like 30%, but not just in terms of 30%, but you are going to miss out on the user base, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it is not in like hundreds, it's like in thousands or
Yeah,
millions sometimes as well. So but that was really interesting to know, and I think that these, I think, items should be kind of taken care, uh, as part of accessibility, advocating for accessibility in the product or in the company overall.
for sure. And another example I love using is that things being accessible don't just like help folks with disabilities. It helps everybody. Like, for example, with videos, having captions, maybe you don't need the captions, but let's just say you're in a quiet GO train going to work and you forgot your headphones. With captions, you can still watch your favorite YouTube show without the sound. And yeah, like it's accessibility is more than just disabled folks. It really benefits everybody in one way or another. So
No, true. I think that was a really good example as well. I think I actually never thought of it, but that was really good example as well.
thank you.
Pretty interesting. Okay, awesome. So let's go forward around. Okay, so let's go forward around this question. This is really interesting. So
Mm,
you've worked across various industries, which are very high impact
yeah.
space, right? Healthcare, finance. So how do you kind of balance the business needs with like a lot of legal and regulatory constraints and
Mhm.
while maintaining a good user experience in such industries?
Sometimes it's just really hard and you can't, unfortunately, but that's just because there's so many factors. Like you said, there's business factors, there's user constraints, there might be legal issues, things like that. And for me, as long as you do your best to respond to the project needs, really advocate for your customers and your team, and move forward with the information that you have, like, things are going to work out one way or another. Like, I remember working at a previous position where all of our user research came from one project manager, and they just got their information anecdotally from friends who were working in the industry, and we're like, project manager, this is not how you do user research. But she's like, this is what people are saying, let's go with it. So unfortunately, that's how we would do our user research, and that can happen often in businesses. But over time, through advocating, through showing examples of like other products you found that do the same thing, how can you borrow from that product to make your product better? Like, finding other ways to, yeah, just that whole advocacy piece. It's really the most important. Like, advocating for yourself, for your customers, for what you need, it really goes from there. And really, like, I think of a quote that my mom says, like, you add in all the things. Like, for example, one project, you're stuck using business, like old business research and old business data. In another project, you get the opportunity to talk with like one customer, two customers potentially. Share that information between projects if they're in the same industry, and really focus on where the focus on where that gap is for each project. And by the end, shake it all up, and eventually it should hopefully even out one way or another. And you and your team will just learn throughout the whole process of how to work around these issues. So
No, that is really interesting as well. I
yeah.
think uh, sharing sharing research between different projects, but I think also with specific example, also old research and new research, whatever that intersection comes out to be, you can find that, as you said, you can like finding that gap is where you can actually, like, I call it insight, like where you
Mhm.
can find that insight
Yes.
which can actually bring something good which you won't imagine how big is it until you actually start implementing it. So that was really interesting. I do have a follow-up question on it because you said like advocacy is quite important as a designer, as what we have understood from the conversation so far. Uh, but being a young designer, they don't tend to have, or they don't tend to get a lot of chance to get to learn how to do advocacy. How
Yeah.
would you say they can do that?
Oh, this one was a hard one for me too. And really, it was in some cases just going to my creative director or going to a more senior designer and being like, hey, I'm worried about situation X. This doesn't feel right to me. When you do that, go with evidence as to why it doesn't feel right to you and what you would do differently. By those two facts, like, or quote unquote facts, by seeing something that's going wrong and then coming up with the solution, that will give you a lot more strength in your response and really allow you to form a better reason as to why something might need to change. And again, it's going to really depend on your senior designer or boss, like on whether it changes or not. But at least by using the insights that you gain from looking at what's currently happening and suggestions for the future and why those suggestions are important, that will really help you like up your advocacy game. And one thing that I always did in past positions was pay attention to the people who are like in a role like one level higher, maybe 2 levels higher than you. How do they advocate for something that their team might need? Or how do they approach tough discussions? Like I have one director now, and he always comes with a lot of questions. He tries to dig into all of the nooks and crannies and really figure out why something is happening and how it's happening before coming up with solutions. And that's something that I have really tried to adopt, for example, and it has been really, really helpful because I come to conversations a lot more informed about the challenge, and then like maybe I don't know how to fix it, but at least like I can work with others better to come up with a potential solution or change something down the road. So
No, I think that is really, really actionable what people can actually do to kind of learn how to actually advocate for what they are doing,
yes.
and uh, which is I feel is really like people don't talk about it a lot, but as a designer, advocacy is a big part of your job.
It is, and it's hard. And I know that too. A lot of designers are introverts. Like myself, I am very much an introvert. But when it's something that you're passionate about, you have to speak up about it. And as long as you speak up about it respectfully and with a lot of insight and knowledge, people are more likely to listen to you and pay attention. And that's really where we can make that change. And there's so many organizations like Toastmasters or meetups that can help people with that public speaking side of things. But it is something that does take time to develop, but it does get easier over that time too.
No, totally agreed. I think uh, it is something, as I said, like people don't understand, but plays a big, big part of the role in your design
Mm-hmm.
career.
Mm-hmm.
Just very interesting. Okay, so let's move forward on the side of mentorship. So I think you have been a mentor on AWS for a while, and you've seen kind of a lot of emerging designers in the industry. What would you say is one common misconception a lot of these junior designers have
Yeah.
about the industry?
Yeah. Can I give two?
Sure, sure.
Okay. So this one might seem harsh, but the first one is that UX is easy to get into. Unfortunately, like this is not to scare anybody away at all. It is a great industry when you do get into it, but it's very, very oversaturated with people who are looking at it for the potential for high pay, for working at prestigious companies and things like that. But from what I've seen and experienced, that's not enough for just getting a job in this industry, for example. You need to, in my opinion, just have other motivations for it, whether it's the people aspect or like research or technology or things like that. Like, again, this is just my opinion, but I feel like it needs to be a little something more than be like, oh, UX, there's a lot of jobs. It's high pay. Let's go for it. And the second one that I really want to like put out there is that, especially when I'm reviewing portfolios, a lot of junior designers seem to think that there's a formula for doing UX. Like you exactly. I see you shaking your head. Yes. They're like you make your personas, you do your wireframes, you do your user journey, you do iteration A, you learn. Yes, those are great steps for learning the basics. However, each and every project you work on will be completely different. And so the tools you have to use will be completely different. Like, for example, in my position right now, I don't do personas. I don't do wireframes. I do a lot of research. I do a lot of systems diagramming. My coworkers don't use wireframes. They have personas, but they mostly just talk to their research counterparts for customer feedback. So again, this is going to seem harsh. What they're teaching in boot camps just barely scratches the surface and doesn't really prepare people for working in the industry, because what we're taught, again, is very, very formulaic. It's very, very step 1, 2, 3. But in the real world, you're going to be starting at like step 32 and trying to get to step 45 within the process. And a lot of times it is trial and error in learning that. And one thing I really, really recommend the folks that I mentor to do is, especially when they're building their portfolio, only show the steps that provide the most impact, that really helped inform your decisions, and just quickly mention the rest. Like, for example, say like, I have Peter Parker. He is my persona. He is a student by day, Spider-Man by night. That's it. You do not show a persona diagram. You do not show every single step how you came up with it. You just mention it and then come with all of the other evidence as to what decisions you made throughout your process, why those decisions were made, how those decisions changed throughout the product. And then at the end, what impact did your redesign or whatever have on your persona? So yeah, just keep things as streamlined as possible.
No, very interesting. I think both of those points are really, really, really true.
Mm-hmm.
And I also feel people just don't want to accept it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a, I don't know if you remember, it's very similar to something like software engineering few years back, even now. But now I feel it's because there are different things to focus on. So now we are not focusing on that, but maybe it's still happening there. But I feel few years back when UX was not as big and people were still in the like software
Mm-hmm.
engineering, it was a similar scenario. It was getting oversaturated, and people thought that people think that that's where the money is. That's to be honest, that's true in
Yeah.
a lot of ways. But you need to also realize everyone who is making real money there, like they are at a very different standard place,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe like they're at a different level, which is a lot of persistence, a lot of hard work to get to, right? And it's similar to UX. And nowadays, maybe 2 3 years back, if some X person would have applied for some role, they might have got it.
Mm-hmm.
But if the same profile 2 years like now would apply for the same role, they may not get it because of the competition in the market, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and that's very important. And also, I really like both of those points in terms of what you said. Definitely something people should really think about before actually uh, pivoting, I would say, or
Mm-hmm.
like thinking about UX, because not just UX, everything is tough. It's just UX is people thinking UX is easy and getting into it. That's the wrong mindset.
Yes.
Uh, and also what you said is I really like while you may have a mindset, yeah, shit, it's a good paying job, UX is nice, I'm okay to do the hard work, I want to do it, but you need to have some other incentives as well,
Yeah.
uh, like motivations. I still remember when I was starting out, I was doing coding and I knew if I continued I would have done great.
Mm-hmm.
But I in between I realized that this is not something I would be happy enough because I'm
Yeah.
going for the money route.
Yep.
That's when I went back and realized that I love talking to people. I love being around tech. I am a creative person, and I felt like this is all kind of pertain. I love kind of seeing good taste or good stuff. Like that's what all of this kind of combined felt like this is a good way to go forward in UX. So somebody has to realize what's their actual calling to go into UX. Money
Yeah.
cannot be that factor.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I highly recommend people use like the first, if they can, like first couple years of their career to help figure that out, because another thing my mom always says, you'll most likely be in your career for 40 years. Like, yes, it's fine to do it for a paycheck if that's what you want to do and focus on like other aspects of your life. But for me, like I'm at my job 8 hours a day. I would like to enjoy what I do to one degree or another. So yeah, yeah,
No, totally makes sense. I think that's what people have realized. The maximum amount of time that they spend in their life is with their job, right?
yeah,
And if you don't like enjoy that, oh, that's a thing that you may want to think about again, right?
yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
but
Yeah.
totally agreed with what the points that you put in. One quick question do I have follow up? I don't know if you would be open to answer it, but like I'm assuming you have mentored quite a lot of folks. What one great success story that you have seen within the folks that you have mentored?
Yeah. Ooh, it's actually been like over 6 months since I've mentored somebody. I needed a bit of a break, but I'd say one person I mentored early last year, she was already a great designer. She had good work, but her portfolio just needed some reorganizing to make it even stronger. Like again, going back to that, showing every step in your portfolio versus showing the ones that have impact. I helped her with a portfolio review, gave her a couple interview tips, especially because she was coming from a similar industry into UX. And I really helped her focus on how does she bring those like skills from her past career into her new one. And she was able to get a job and she was really happy with what she's doing. So yeah, yeah,
Well, I think that's I think really interesting because as I said, like while design is like UX specifically is quite tough,
mhm,
but if you see like the community and the networking around here is still quite close knit. Yeah, and I think as long as you can find good mentors like you and a lot of other folks that are out there, like getting to the right place is not difficult as long as you are like if you are at a zero, if you have covered the path to 0 to 1, like 1 to 100, it's tough, but it's not that tough that you think. Like you just need the right
yeah,
guidance for it.
for sure. And networking has been huge. Like I know that in like we're both based around Toronto, the greater Toronto area. Like there's Design X, there's I think Into Design Systems, there is meetups, there is also ADP List. Just a lot of great organizations where you can get in touch with a lot of folks and really learn from like folks who have been in the industry for like 20 plus years, or just have like a bunch of more junior designers get together and have a jam session on working on their portfolios. So yeah.
Totally agreed. Okay, so I think we have covered a bunch of stuff around your
Mm,
journey and how you have grown and how experiences around design system and accessibility has been a huge part of your journey. So I do want to kind of sum it up. I do have one last great question, which is really helpful for the folks out there. So if you could kind of go back in time and kind of give one advice to your younger self or like a lot of folks who are starting out in
yeah.
UX, what would you say that one or two pieces of advice would be?
Yeah. Ooh. When you sent me these questions earlier today, I really had to think about it. And I was a very, very impatient person earlier in my career, still can be, but just really, really always wanted to go to the next level. And how do I get there? How do I get there? How do I get there? But I would tell myself to just take your time and be patient. Like again, we have 40, 50 years of job time to work through. So have fun with what you're learning. And like looking back now, I never thought it would take me 5 to 6 years to move from graphic design to UX into design systems. And this journey has taken a lot longer than I expected. And I do see myself as being very impatient throughout that time. But looking back, I'm kind of happy the journey happened that way because it really helps me figure out, like, okay, where am I at right now? Am I really happy? Am I making enough money where I can be comfortable? No? Okay. What do I need to work on to move to the next step? And with that, one thing I would also tell my younger self is keep in touch more with my former coworkers, because those folks can really be your biggest cheerleaders and really help you on as you move throughout your career. Like, for example, I'm gonna give him all his flowers. My current director, Guy Siegel, he has been a big cheerleader in my career, and yeah, it's just been a great experience working with him at multiple companies and seeing like all the different like teams that we've worked through and how we work together. So by keeping in touch with him, I was able to get this current position to work at this fantastic team. I really hope that other people have like great friends and mentors like that they can lean on, and that'll really only happen like if you keep in touch with people, like even if it's going for a coffee every month, like just do it, or sending a little hi message on LinkedIn, like I hope you're doing well, and going from there. Yeah. So it would definitely
No,
be just take your time, have fun, and keep in touch with people.
totally agreed. I think I really resonated with what you said around connecting with old colleagues, which
Mhm.
I feel is like when I think about it, I think they have been the biggest cheerleader, and even in my life as well. I think they've always supported with what I do. They've always guided me in the right direction. They've always given
Mhm.
me the honest feedback that I should have
Mhm.
received. And yeah, I think that was really good. And I think also the advice that you gave to people to not be impatient. Also, the process takes long. It's
Yeah.
again, it's
Yeah.
not like you click it and you get a job. It's not like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And it's really hard to not be impatient when you're in the middle of it, but it's your career is a journey that's going to take a long time. So, yeah. Yeah, like
No, I agree.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree. I think especially with the market right now, people feel it's really tough,
Mhm.
and can be really competitive, and they can be you cannot see any reward as soon as possible.
Mhm.
Like, and it tends to I know it tends to generate a lot of feelings of impatience, but I think what you said, like you should kind of control that and understand it's a longer game, and it's going to take a while, but it's going to go to a fruitful end.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Christine, really lovely having you here. I think your journey has been really interesting, and I think a lot of people would have gotten amazing insights from it. I will link down your LinkedIn in the comments below for anybody who wants to reach out to you. Uh, Really nice having you here. Really nice spending time on a conversation with you. Yeah, and thanks for coming on the podcast.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.